for future generations, what is your full name?
Franklin, Dale, James, John, Roe.
Okay, I'm not sure I did know that. Wow. Do you know why your parents named you that?
I'm named after my Uncle Frank, who was killed in World War One. After I was born, when it was time for me to be baptized, my sister, oldest sister Kate, took me to get baptized with my dad because my mom was in the hospital. She did not like the name of Dale, so she changed it, and I was baptized Franklin James. And of course, when I was confirmed at that time, you took another name, which was John. So that's where you get Franklin, Dale, James, John.
And how did your parents feel when they found out she changed that? Did they mind?
I don't think it was ever really mentioned because, of course, I went to the Catholic school and I was known there as Franklin James, clear up until I graduated and on the cards they asked how I wanted to know whether it's Franklin D or what, or Franklin J. I said no, it's D. Franklin Dale. Up until that time, it was never really discussed, and from then on, of course, in all records and everything, it's Franklin D. That's on the birth certificate.
Did you have any nicknames growing up?
Just basically Tanky, I guess is.
Tanky?
Yeah.
And how did that come about?
Aunt Marge.
Aunt Marge. So were you born in Waterloo?
Yeah, born at home at 520 Leland Avenue. Which is no longer in existence. The street isn't. It's now University. It's where Belmont Avenue is. That would be the start of the 500 block, and we lived at 520. So.
And what was the house like that you grew up in?
It was just a two-story home, and the downstairs had a large entryway, and it was almost like a regular sized room, and then there was the living room and the dining room and the kitchen, and upstairs was two large bedrooms and the bath at the end. The folks had one bedroom, and the 7 kids, there's 8 of us, but at the time there's only 7 of us, shared the other ones, with the girls having a curtain in between in the middle. We had actually had what you would consider 2 main lots. So there was a large lot alongside the house, where so we had plenty of room, and we had a garden out behind, a big garden.
Well, whose job was it to tend to the garden? Did you all pitch in? Or?
Well, it would start in the spring, of course. There was actually, at that time, there was actually people who would come around with their horses and plows and plow your garden for you. And then it was just a matter of raking it down and getting it ready to plant. And of course, Mom actually was out there most of the time, and surveyed, made sure everything was planted the way she wanted it. And then after that, it basically, I think it just most generally took care of itself, you know. So we had the staples, you know, the radishes and the onions and tomatoes and cucumbers and lettuce and of course everybody in the town at that time had a garden, you know. It was in the 30s and the Depression was on, and then you had, of course, the war right after that, so everybody had to just pitch in and do what they could, you know.
So I'm assuming she canned?
Huh?
Did she can?
Oh
for
yeah,
vegetables?
you know, yeah, she canned a lot, and we had a place in the basement where the canned goods was. A lot of tomatoes and pickles and stuff like that. And it was strange that it wasn't actually canning, but you know, they actually had a can that sat on the stove at home, and when they fried or anything, the grease from that was poured in the can. And when the can got actually full, dried out, you know, not dried out, but solidified, you could actually take it to the grocery store to sell it.
Really?
Yeah. Because of the war, there just wasn't lard and stuff. And you know, you couldn't, you was allowed only so much sugar. You had to have a stamp to go to the store to get sugar. You had to have a stamp to get gasoline. You was only allowed so much gasoline. I mean, it was really different.
A lot different.
Yeah.
What's your earliest childhood memory?
Oh, I would imagine it must be about kindergarten. And I remember the nun that we had was Sister Mary Lee O'Cadia, and she had been at Sacred Heart for years, and most of the kids had her in kindergarten. And so, the only school I ever went to was Sacred Heart. I went there, of course, it was not only a grade school, but a high school. And it was in, probably the 60s, I think, when Columbus opened up, and they took all the Catholic high schools and put it into one. But before then, each of the Catholic schools had their own high schools. So.
What do you remember about the sister? Was she strict?
Oh, no, she was very tiny, very fragile, and just what you would say, one that really liked little kids, and she just made over them, and it was really an experience, you know. I mean, she really made you feel at home.
Oh, that's good. So what kind of games did you guys play, and were they different from what you did at school? The games you played at school to what you did at home with your siblings or neighborhood friends?
We lived in a neighborhood where there's a lot of kids. In the evenings, you know, the typical game was tin can out, you know, where you'd put a can in the middle of the street, and somebody was it, and somebody'd run up and kick the can, and it had to be put in a special place, and whoever was it would run and get the can and set it where in the middle of the street where it belonged, and everybody else would be hiding. And then the one who did it, of course, had to find them and beat them back to the can and put their foot on them and call their name and say, you know. And then, of course, he'd come out from hiding. But while this was going on, as somebody ran up and kicked the can, that everybody that had been caught gets to run and hide again. So, and this would go on, you know, it seemed like a long time, but it would probably be over by 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, because it was dark, and that's when you went home. And I think most bedtimes was probably 8 or 9 o'clock at night, but you didn't worry too much about it. Back then, you know, there's no air conditioning, so everybody sat on their front porches and watched the kids, and they had their radios out there, you know, playing music or whatever. And So it was oh so much different, you know.
What was your neighborhood like? Were the houses close together like they are now, or?
Yeah, it was just a typical neighborhood. What was strange about it, I guess would be different than now, is on our side of the street, we was the last house that had a bathroom, you know. From then on, there was outhouses, and the street went down to the 600 block, so that you had almost 2 full blocks of outhouses. I mean, it was, you know, and everybody tipped them over, you know, on Halloween, and it was just part of it. You know.
Do you remember when you got your first indoor bathroom?
No, we had one when I was,
Oh,
as
you
long
did?
as I remember, yeah. I don't know when they got it, but yeah, as far back as I remember it now. But the tub, I don't remember the tub being put in, but I do remember that a lot of times we bathed in the kitchen in a big tub, but and I don't remember why, because in my mind, I can always remember the bathtub, so I had no idea why we did that. But that's what we did.
Oh. And how many brothers and sisters did you say you had?
I had 3 sisters and 4 brothers. There was 8 of us.
And can you tell me their names and maybe just a little something about each one of them?
The oldest was Catherine. She graduated in 1939, the year that I started kindergarten. She was very active in schoolwork and everything else. I never really got to know her because being so much younger. And she was married about, she must have been about 19 when she was married, so I was probably 6 or so. And so I really didn't get to know her that well because she moved during the war. They went to, moved to Oregon, where her husband built ships. He was a carpenter, and that's what he went out there for, to help with the war and build ships. And so in 1953, when I was transferred in the Navy to Miramar, California, which is just north of San Diego, her and her husband and 3 kids had moved to Torrance, California. And so it was just home. I would go there. I'd get off work on Friday nights and go there and take a bus, and then she would pick me up on Highway 101 when I got off the bus, and it's probably 6 or 7 miles to her place. And then on Sunday night, they would take me to the bus depot, and I'd go back to San Diego, and that was every weekend, you know. She had 3 kids. Joe was the oldest, and she now lives in Oregon. And her sister was Jackie, was the youngest, and Jim was the boy. He was in the middle. Kate passed away at 40. She was quite the bowler, and she had a little, not a
Do you want to stop?
She had a little knot on the bottom of her foot that bothered her bowling, and So she went to have it cut off. They removed it, and the next day they cut her leg off. It turned out to be cancer, and that's how fast it spread.
Oh.
And at that time, they used to say if he was cancer-free for 5 years, that, it'd be over with. Well, on her last checkup, and the 5 years, she had 3 or 4 malignant tumors in her lungs and in her stomach. And she passed away 3 months after that on Christmas Day. And out of the 3 kids, she had only one ever married. That was the oldest one, Joe. Jim was the next oldest, and he was to be married, and his girlfriend died of cancer right before they was to be married, so he never.
Oh, that's so sad.
married. And Jackie, the youngest, she became a nurse, and then the next oldest one would be Johnny. Johnny was he was just a typical boy, except he had polio, and he ended up being a cripple because at that time Iowa City is about the only place you could go, and at that time, which would have been the late 20s, the way they treated it was just they put his leg in a cast. Just left it. So his leg, actually, his bad leg was no bigger than my arm. He was, as a man, he was in a cast all that time. Then the war really took its toll on him because all his friends went. And of course he couldn't. And but he married late in life. I think they had, God, I don't know, 6 kids, I believe it was. And he moved to Kansas City with his family. And John lived to be about 70 when he passed. So. And then the next one would be the one I think all the kids remember is Aunt Marge. And she was just something else. She was awful spunky. Now, believe it or not, she didn't take anything off anybody. She actually left home at 16. Moved almost a half a block away. But she did it just to prove to Dad that she could do what she wanted to, because he had corrected me or something, and she didn't like it, and she thought he was wrong, and that was her way of rebelling. And of course she moved back home after a while and graduated and everything. Little known that Marge, when she was little, had brain tumor, and she was in Iowa City off and on for that. In 53, she also had polio. And she had it in her leg, and most of it in her neck and back bothered her. But at that time they had so much different, that she had a lot of aches and pains from it, but other than that. And her goal in life was she wanted to outlive the folks. And then, of course, Dad passed away a week after he was 90, and that was her goal. Of course, she didn't make it. Marge would be 90 in April of this year, 2015. So she was about a half a year short of making it, but that was her goal. And of course, she passed away with cancer. So. And then the next one was Eileen. Eileen, so Johnny, he didn't. Kate graduated from Sacred Heart. Johnny, he didn't graduate. Marge, of course, graduated from Sacred Heart. Eileen was the next. She was kind of the redhead of the family and kind of the wild one for the women, you know. But, she spent a lot of time in the summer at our uncle's place up by New Hampton. She liked to go up there with her cousins on the farm. And once she graduated, shortly after that is when World War II was over, and Marty, who was been in the Navy, come back, and she was working at Wrath in the office, and he was the messenger boy there, and she had bet somebody that she could have a date with him before the other one did. Anyway, they ended up getting married. And they moved around a lot. They was here, and then while I was in service, they was in California, and then they come back from California after I'd been home for a while out of the service. They had bought a home down on Randall, and then they decided that they would try their luck at Okoboji, and they went up there and bought a motel, and Marty made part of it into a restaurant, and they was there for a few years, and then they sold out, opened a bar in New Hampton, left there and moved on to Davenport, and when the folks passed away, then they moved in the house that the folks had. And they lived there until she passed. She had diabetes real bad. When she passed, she had went to the doctor and they told her that she had probably a week to live. And the strange part of it is that week she was in the hospital, just as clear-headed as possible. Knew everything that was going on, was in no pain whatsoever. If you didn't know that there was something wrong, you would have figured, she should go home at any time. And like I said, on the last day of the week that they had said that Marty was going to go out, getting ready to go out to the hospital when they called and said she was gone. And she lived to be about, I don't know, late 60s, early 70s. And the next one, of course, is Bob. Bob, he was, you almost have to put Bob and Don together because they was really inseparable, even though Bob was 2 years older than Don. they would do everything imaginable. They went and took Dad's guns one time and ran away from home. I didn't know where the hell they was going or anything, but they went. And they got to feeling bad about taking Dad's guns. I think it was more worried about what he'd do when he caught him. And so they took the guns to Tom Miser's house, and Tom was one of the foremen that worked for Dad at Deers, and put him in his barn. Of course, he seen him and called Dad, and Dad was there before they got out. But they did everything that imaginable. They out by where Pat had the farm.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that was years ago. That with no cars or anything, that was a long walk and stuff. And they went out along with Herman Colbert, who Bob married her sister. But they went out with him, and he only had one leg, and he walked with a crutch. And they went out and decided that they was going to ride some horses that was out there in the field. Didn't belong to them, didn't make no difference. They actually took the horses and they cut down a fence. It was just right. Well, the farmer seen him and he took off at him. And they decided, they was young and could outrun him and do whatever they wanted to. And decided they'd jump the Black Rock Creek and swim across it, And it was in the paper, horse thieves and river chase.
Oh my.
Because the part that they dove into, they was not familiar with. It was probably about knee deep. And it was a disaster, and that's where he caught him. We had a swimming hole on Black Hawk Creek, and they called it high banks because the bank was probably 6 foot up, and it was all sandy bottom, ideal swimming. And they went down there one day, and Herman was with them, and I happened to be with them. They let me go every now and then swimming, but we was down there, and there was 3 or 4 guys that was about down in Bob's age. They come and they when we got there, they was in swimming. That's what it was. And so the boys said, "What are you doing in that swimming hole?" This more or less his mouth and back and forth. And Herman walked up close to the bank, and his crutch dropped into the water. Of course, on purpose. And the guy grabbed his crutch, and when he went to hand it to him, Herman took it and hit him with it. And the fight was on. And of course, he had to go to court for that. And it was, they just, everything. And I remember when I got out of service, Bob, at that time, Tunis was just opening. So Bob, he built a car to drive to Tunis. And he had his own car for a year or so, and then he drove for another guy that actually built this car for him. Bob was married in Tunis.
And where's that?
Tunis Speedway.
Oh, okay.
It was located between Waterloo and Cedar Falls. Had regular races there every Sunday night. And during the races, during intermission, they had a flatbed trailer hooked onto the back end of a car, and the minister was on there, and Betty and Bob was on there. And as they went around the track is when they performed the ceremony. And that's where he was married. Betty and Bob ended up with, I think, 7 kids. They also moved to Missouri, around St. Joe. And Bob is still alive. He'll be 85 April 1st. And like I said, Don was a lot like him. And then a lot of ways, like they both quit school in the 9th grade. They said, we're old enough their GEDs later on. But Don was different. Don had polio as a kid. And his polio was in his left hand and his right leg. The leg was come out of it good, but he had to have surgery so much on his left hand that it actually, the thumb was crooked into the middle like this. And the way they treated it at that time, they put a cast, a steel cast that was removable at night, on the right hand, so he would use the left.
Oh.
And Don was not about to be taken advantage of by anybody. And if he had a problem with somebody, he might hide behind the tree, and when they come by, he'd come out swinging. But he had that cast on his good hand, and he took advantage of it. He would use it if he had to. But no, Don was, he went to work as a cab driver. In fact, he had a lot of different jobs. He was driving a cab though when he met Bobby, his wife, and she worked at the Maid-Rite, and he went in, and it was just a couple of months later they was married. Children was adopted, except one, and he was when he was born. They said that there was a problem with him and put him in the incubator, but they figured he'd be all right. Well, Don went home and got a phone call that their baby had passed away, and he asked him what happened, and he said, "Well, when we went to move the incubator is when it happened." And of course he figured that they must unplug the incubator or something. And so he went out and he actually got in a fight over it. And what the problem was is there was a hole in the diaphragm. And when they moved the incubator, when they stopped the movement of the intestines, it broke through the hole and crushed the baby's lungs. So they never would have another one. So like I said, they had 4 and they was all adopted. But Don, he took my job at Deers when I quit there. And he, like I said, he got his GED. He became a foreman at Deers. And really had just normal everyday life. And Don passed away when he was 79, and he passed away with cancer. And then myself, and then my youngest brother, Art, or Butch as he was known as in the days, was 6 years younger than I am. Everybody was gone by the time he got around. And of course he was the spoiled one. But I think they remarked that we didn't get along because, you see, I was the youngest one for 6 years before he came around, and he was invading my territory. But he, like I said, when I went into service, he would have been about 11. And I remember coming home, and he must have been, I don't know, 15 or 16, but he's a lot bigger, a lot taller than I am. And of course, he's pretty well built. And I, you know, come home home and I'd call Dad to come to the airport to get me. And when we come out and started walking up through the back, he thought he'd grown big enough that it was time to take a swing at me. and it didn't last too long, and my mother come out. But Butch, like I said, after I got out of service, he was, he quit school in his senior year, and he also went back and got his GED, but that's what he did. But Butch married and they had 4 children. But he was out one night, and I can't remember if he was married then. I really can't remember. Anyway, he lost control of his car. Well, he must have been married. He lost control of his car and hit a home and hurt his back and stuff and legs. And so he always had a problem after that with his back and legs. And he bought some property down in the woods, down in southern Missouri, about as far south as you can get. And he built a home down there, and he had bought 3 or 4 extra lots, so each one of his kids would have one. And so there's one of them lived right next door to him that he built the home for. And I don't know whether the other kids sold lots or not. That's where he's at now. So that was our family.
How do you think they would describe you?
Oh, just a big lovable. Well, there's no doubt about it. Like I said, I was spoiled for 6 years before I went to school. You know, I knew my multiplications and all that. Taught by my sister Marge on the kitchen doorway. She with chalk. That's where she taught me how to multiply and everything. But I knew that before I even started to school. And I was very small compared to the other ones. And so with brothers, one was 2 years older than I and one 4 years older than I. They didn't allow anybody to pick on me. And that also meant that I was not allowed to do a lot of things that they did. That was their, and you're not old enough and you can't do this. So I was pretty well protected and stuff from everything. And later in life, always got along real well with them. I always figured though, when I got out of service and stuff and the boys was around, that if anybody would mouth off to them, then that would have been my responsibility to stand up for them. But which I did, but it really wasn't necessary. They could handle themselves. But I always figured that. And the girls, like I said, Kate was way in California, but in Eileen most of the time. So it was basically Marge and I always got along very good together,
Did you play, when you were in high school, did you play sports?
Yes, I did. I played basketball. But when I was in school, when I graduated, I was probably 5'4".
Really?
Yeah, I didn't grow tall until I was actually in service. So, like I said, I played, had fun, but
Yeah.
no big deal.
And that was at Sacred Heart?
Had to be, that's the only place I went to school.
Yeah.
Sacred Heart Cardinals.
When you were older, or in your teenage or early 20s, what kind of music did you guys like to listen to?
Country.
Country?
Yeah, that's not all there was. I mean, that seemed, but I like, I guess country because when I was in service, that's what was on the radio. But I always liked, during World War II, they had so many songs, and memorable songs, and, it was just, it wasn't country western, there was just good music at the time, and just the kind of music that would just stick, to. So I guess I could say I liked about everything that was on, So.
And after you graduated, what made you decide to go into the service?
Well, there was half the boys in our graduating class went in at the same time. But there wasn't too much. Well, first of all, the Korean War is on. And back then, there was no television or anything to know what was really going on. So you really didn't pay any attention that there was a war on. So after we enlisted, it was kind of a shock to find out there was. But I had talked to Jack Collentine, who was a friend of mine, and he said, there ain't much going on, might as well join service. And so then Joe Snyder, we'd run into him, and we told him what we wanted. He said, that sounded like a good idea. And we ran into Jim Ball at the recruiting, but he was going to go in the Air Force, and when we told him we was going in the Navy, he said, fine. So like I said, half the boys in our graduating class, all 4 of us, there's only 8 boys in our graduating class.
Oh, wow.
We all joined and went to the Navy. We all made up our mind that we was going to be storekeepers. That seemed the easiest thing there was at the time. So we had an interview after boot camp, and we went in and happened to get a guy from Waterloo, and Joe Snyder had the same one, but he was in before I was. So, but the first 2 in was Jack and Jim. And they went in and they asked them what they wanted to be, and they said storekeepers. And they said fine. So when Joe went in to talk to his guy, the guy said, well, if you're a storekeeper, that really isn't, no big deal. A lot of people want to be that. But if you would probably like being a quartermaster better, and the reason is that we'll send you to Bainbridge, Maryland to school, and you'll go to school out there for 3 or 4 months, and you'll get used to the Navy, and then, and Joe said, well, all right, so he said, become a quartermaster. Well, I went in, and they said, what do you want to be? And I said, a storekeeper, and the guy I had from Waterloo, he said, aviation or general service. I said, what's the difference? He said, general service, you're going to go to Guam. Aviation, you go to school in Norman, Oklahoma for 3 or 4 months to see if that's what you like. And then from there, whatever you decide then, whether you want to be a storekeeper or mechanic or whatever, then you go to to school either in Memphis, Tennessee, or Jacksonville, Florida. I said, well, I might as well be aviation then. So I went to Norman, Oklahoma. I didn't see no ships there, nothing. But I went to Norman, Oklahoma. Joe went to Bainbridge, Maryland, and Jim and Jack went to Guam. Guam was probably 16 miles long and a mile wide. They hated each other.
Oh boy.
They never spoke. Never had anything to do with each other. They was there, I think, for 18, 19 months. And when it was time to leave, to come back to the United States for the new assignments, Jim, who was a big shyster anyway, he was working on the air base there, and Jack had become a personnel man, so he was working in personnel, the main base. Jim went to him and said, Jack, if you can get us transferred to the aviation, he said, I can get us lined up so we can fly home. Other than that, would have to take ships. So Jack got him transferred just so they could be there. Of course, Jim being around all the time, the aviation, he flew home and disregarded Jack. Jack had to come back by ship. And we was all having a reunion. Jack got back the day everybody else was leaving. So, but yeah, that was the reason. But the reason was we didn't have anything else to do, and it sounded like a good idea at the time.
Yeah. Do you think that made a pretty big impact on the rest of your life, joining the military?
Well, yeah, and I guess the reason would be that when I was there, I always liked math. Like I said, from bookkeeping, that's what I took in school. They had what they call a squadron allotment. Now, it was the allotment that was the allowance for gasoline for the airplanes, because you could only spend so much money, they give you so much. And it was for like hand tools, stuff like that. It had nothing to do with any parts of the plane, because that was, you had to have them, that was covered. But they give you so much for operating, and that what I did when I was in there was handle the squadron allotment. So that's, of course, later on I worked in bookkeeping on the railroad, and so I guess you could say, yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your parents?
Well, Dad was a full-blooded Irishman. His parents immigrated here in late 1800s. Dad would have been the third one born in the United States. His oldest brother, Andrew, was born in Ireland. Brother, Packy, which was Patrick, was born in Ireland. Come over. His second oldest brother, Andrew, Andy, was born on a ship coming to the United States. And then there was, the next one born was Joe. The only girl, which is Grandma's grandmother, was Elizabeth, and then the other boys, which was Dad, and then Ed, Paul, and Tom. There was other ones that had passed away. In fact, Peter and Paul was twins. And during childbirth, Paul actually, with the movement and stuff, actually kicked his brother to death before he was born. And during childbirth, he died. But like I said, there was a couple other girls and stuff, but they all either died in infancy or stillborn. So, but Dad, like I said, he was a tough Irishman. He didn't take no crap from nobody. He was an avid hunter.
I didn't know.
He always had his coon hounds or fox hounds. He was a dead shot with a pistol, rifle. He was a general foreman at John Deere's. He had started at John Deere's as a repairman of the tractors back in the late 1920s. And then went to work in Waterloo. And he was, like I said, he was general foreman of the foundry maintenance. So anything had to do with maintenance in the foundry, he was responsible for. And he had foremen working each shift, but if there's a problem, they'd call him. And he was strict. He has a razor strap that everybody used to shave with a straight edge razor. And this razor strap, they would hook onto the wall by the sink and take this razor, and that's how they sharpened it, with that strap. It was leather. And if you go in the house after 9 o'clock at night, you better figure you're going to get that strap, because he would use it.
Did you ever come home late?
Well, it ain't that I come home late, but I only got it a few times, because if we was out, it wouldn't be too much later because he was right there in the neighborhood. But if I was a little late, the boys would shove me in first, they figured, and he was smart enough to know that, and he would wait. In fact, one time was up in bed and they was laughing and giggling and carrying on, and he was at the bottom of the steps and hollered up, "That's enough, I'll have no more of it." And they kept it up, and all of a sudden there he was with the razor strap. And he gave him a good paddling and stuff. And then he went outside the door and they started headed her to themselves. And you could hear him walking down the steps, and all he was doing is just walking outside the door, lighter and lighter, like he was. And then when they started giggling, he opened the door. And then they didn't giggle the next time. But he, like I said, he would do what he wanted to. I was probably 12 or 13 years old, and was sleeping one night, and he took his coon hounds out down in the Black Hawk Woods to get him ready for hunting season. And he woke me up and said, I could hear the dogs barking tree. He said, "Time, I want you to come with me." So we walked down in the woods, and they pointed out the coon up in the tree. He said, "Crawl up in the tree and shake it out." And I said, "What?" He said, "Well, I'm going to sit it up." I said, "I don't want to shoot it. Can't do that. So you just walk up and shake it out and crawl." So I crawled up and started shaking it. And all of a sudden that coon started coming down that branch. And all I could do was hold on. And the coon went right over my back. And I kicked it. And then, of course, it hit the ground, but the dogs took care of it. But like I said, where Fletcher Avenue is now, when they first put it in, he was down there hunting one time, and it was hunting season. And they treated coon, and couldn't have been too far off that highway. There he was out there with his rifle, sitting up with hell, he didn't care. Shot it out, But like I said, he He didn't take anything off anybody.
Did he have a sensitive side, or were you privy to see that if he did?
Well, I guess the only time that you could say that was when he was older, and he had developed stomach cancer. And he believed in the veterans home in Iowa City. Veterans Hospital. He had insurance, he could go any place he wanted to. But he really seemed like he enjoyed it down there. And we went down for his surgery and stuff. And so he was always, like I said, the strong one. But he was getting released from Iowa City and I was working in Des Moines, so I said, well, I'll drive over and pick him up and bring him home. And so I went over there, and when we checking out, he was introducing me to everybody, one of my boys and all this crap, and how much he thought of him and everything. So we gets in the car and he said, could you stop at Long John Silver's? And he said, I just love some shrimp, and they didn't have any. And I said, sure, so we got them. And then we started driving, and like I said, he was quiet and talked very low and stuff. And pretty soon he said, now, I'm a little tired, I'm gonna go to sleep. He said, I just wanted you to know, because he said, if you look over and I've got my eyes closed, I'm not dead.
Jeez.
That's about as quiet as he ever got. Other than that, the old man was the old man, and that's, that's how it was. He never took care of any of the money or anything at the house. Never paid any of the bills. I was always up to Mom, and he, if he wanted something, he'd just say, and she'd say, all right, like Grandma, She always taken care of the money, so she knew how much we had. If we wanted something, say, forgot it. And she'd say, we either get it or we don't get it, But she always made sure it was there for anything you needed. So.
Was your mom strict?
No, Mom was from a very large family, and they was full-blooded Germans. And Dad had met her when he come home from service. It's up by New Hampton, up around Elda Vista, where they was farming. And he was about 22 and she's about 15. And when they got married, she would have been 17, I think, because Kate was born in 21 when Mom was born in 03, so she was 18 when Kate was born. But no, Mom was just the motherly type, she took care of everything. She made sure that the kids was taken care of, and they had what they needed, not what they wanted, but what they needed. And no, she was just the typical mother. I mean, I don't know how else you'd explain it.
So I've heard that she leg wrestled.
Oh yeah, she.
That's not typical of everyone's
Well,
mother.
Yeah, it is if you lived in the neighborhood we did. Because on a Saturday night, one's next door where Uncle Max, his relation, lived, Margie's husband. The one played the violin, and his brother-in-law played the accordion. And of course, Ma could play the piano. So it was nothing to have them come over on a Saturday night and have kind of like a hoedown and stuff, you know, and everybody knew everybody. And like I said, Ma, she was the type that she would, you know, like I said, take anybody in or anything else. But she also let them know that she was no weakling. And we had this big yard, and leg wrestling, you know, where you lay side by side and you both put your legs up in the air and hook knees and see which one can throw the other one. And she was an expert at it. And she'd throw the guys or anybody else, you know. Yeah, she was something else. But always the lady, she, you know, she maybe flip them, but you know, there was nobody really liked her. I made a mistake once, and just once, when she was in her 80s, so it had to be in the 90s, I guess. It was a real cold one winter, and Grandma used to, for holidays and stuff, would go to the store and buy their groceries. So, you know, that was our gift to them, and so that they didn't have to go out. And we went over one day and delivered the groceries and stuff, and kids got home, and Mom called and said, "Ha ha ha, you forgot something." I think it was milk. And so she said I had to go out to the store and get milk. But anyway, then she was talking to him, and I said, well, you should have called her. So, oh, that's all right. And then she called a little while later, and she said, I bet you can't guess what I just did. And I said, I have no idea. And it was cold. She said, well, I just took the garbage out to the curb. And I said, oh, I don't suppose you put a coat on either, did you? Well, it ain't that far out to the curb. And then I said, you damned old fool. Wrong. She didn't say anything to me, but she called Marge. And let Marge know what I'd done. And of course, Marge let me know. There was no apologizing for it because she just laughed, you know. But I actually hurt her feelings, and for me, I just didn't think, you know, I was being funny. She didn't think it was funny. But I guess she got me back when I was going to work one day. It was right after Easter, and I was going out of town, and so I stopped by the house to see him before I left. And it was right after Easter, like I said, and she would color Easter eggs for Dad every year, you know, clear up till 90 years old. She still did it. And, but she wasn't beyond being cute about it either. She sometimes, you know, she didn't think it was too bad if she'd have to raw egg and color it. But I went over and there's Easter egg, so I took one, you know, I figured, well, I'd eat it on the highway. And I stuck it in my pocket in my suit.
Oh, no.
Well, needless to say, I had one hell of a time getting that raw egg out of my soup, getting it
Oh.
clean. And like I said, and they would do the damnedest thing, like on Halloween. I was eating supper and there was a knock on the door and Dad looked out in there. He went to the door and there was two girls there that was teenagers. And I imagine 15, 16, the way it sounded. Anyway, they said trick or treating, you know. He looked at him, he said, just a minute. And he went out and they was eating supper and they was having pork chop. He picked up 2 pork chop bones. Went out and gave each one a pork chop bone. Now he also had a gun sitting by his chair at all times, loaded. And he knew how to use it. And Aunt Marge went over one day, acting smart, dressed up, and it was right before Halloween, but it was the day before trick-or-treating. But she went, it was getting dark, she went and got down on her knees and knocked on the door. And my mom come to the door and she said, trick or treat. And Mom said, well, you're a day early. And she just kept saying, trick or treat, trick or treat. So Ma went and got the bag of candy and brought it to the door and held it out, and she grabbed the whole bag. Marge did. I said, Marge, did you realize you was taking your life in your hands? I said, that gun's there right there. She said, and I know, and I kept one eye on it. But we was there one time, and Dad had a little chihuahua, I guess it was. And it was the ugliest looking thing you ever seen, and it was so old and lost most of his teeth. And we sitting there, and Dad said, Frank, let my dog out waiting for him. I said, sure. Go open the front door, and a little dog ran out there in the front yard. And there was a guy moving in down the block. He had 2 black labs. And they was barking and stuff. The little dog was barking back at him. And they started up towards the house, and I hollered at the guy and I said, you know, you better take care of your dogs. And I called the little one. And of course, they run towards the house. And all of a sudden, there's a bang, and I thought, the guy must have threw a rock at the house or something at his dogs. And I went to turn around, you know, to see what was going on. There was no rock. Dad shot right over my shoulder with that pistol at them dogs. They would, you know. I mean, like I said, he said, what are they gonna do to me? You know, I'm 80-some years old.
I remember going to their house when I was really young, and Grandma, she didn't seem old to me, even though I'm sure she was, you know, getting up there at the time. But and we used to go over to play at the park.
Yeah.
Belmont Park. Did you guys play there?
You know, first one, let me tell you about Belmont Park. When I was little, it was nothing but sandburrs there. And my sister Marge decided that they needed a playground. So she took it among herself. She wrote a letter to the mayor of Waterloo explaining about this lot and how it should be made into a playground or stuff. And it shouldn't have houses on it, you know, it's just a big lot. So that's how Belmont Park become.
Really?
And they had the mayor come out and dedicated it to a park. And Marge had 2 of the neighborhood girls and my sister Eileen dressed up like the Hawaiian girls with the grass skirts and stuff, and they did the hula and stuff in this program and everything. And there was speeches and stuff. And I asked Marge, well, didn't you? No, she said, I wouldn't do anything like that. You know, them other girls can do it. You know, I worked on it. But in the later on, when I got to be about 9 or 10, they actually had enough parks in town where they had rivalries. You know, they had each team had their own softball team, and they had what they called the midgets for the younger, and then the adult ones. And I think I was up to 16 or something. And they had tournaments in the summertime for the kids where each playground had their Chinese checker champ or regular checkers champ, horseshoe champ, swimming champs, and then you'd all get together for the champions for the city and have a tournament for the city champs. I mean, it was so much different then. And they had people there, you know, as overseers to make sure the kids was taken care of and stuff. And one of the first ones they had was Murray Ware. Murray Ware become one of East High's biggest coaches. I mean, he was at East High for years, basketball coach. And the thing about it, he, the reason he took the job as a playground director was he was a professional basketball player in the NBA. And at that time, they probably made $25 a game to play. So in the summertime, you had to live off something, so that's what he did. And very few people know that Waterloo was one of the original of the NBA. It was the Waterloo Hawks.
Really?
And the league at that time was Minneapolis Lakers, who become the Los Angeles Lakers. Fort Wayne Pistons become the Detroit Pistons. Rochester Royals, who become the Kansas City Royals. But anyway, that the original NBA included Waterloo. And the Waterloo Hawks was sold, and they become the St. Louis Hawks. And now they're the Atlantic Hawks.
Huh.
That was the original. So Atlanta, Georgia, you can tell Wade that his Hawks was actually formed in Waterloo, the NBA, as the Waterloo Hawks.
I will do that.
So like I say, Belmont Playground was a place where everybody went to, you know, as kids, and they had square dances there every week. And for the adults, I mean, they brought in a professional caller for the square dances, music. They had, after they put the tennis courts in, they had to freeze them over with ice skating rinks during the winter time. And like I said, didn't have much, but everything was there for the kids. It's so much different than now, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Kids, you could go up there and play, and you lived 2 or 3 blocks away. Nobody thought, you know, anything of it because you walk home at getting dark. But who cared? Ain't nobody gonna bother you.
So did you, when you were a kid, I'm assuming you probably spent a lot of time outside all day?
Yeah. As soon as school was over, first thing to come off was your shoes, and you went barefooted most of the time, and outside all the time, you know.
So the shoes were for school or
School,
church, maybe?
Yeah, that was it. Every year you got a new pair. But summertime, you very seldom had them on. So,
Do you remember anything growing up? Like nowadays we hear about things all the time in the news where things are happening in our neighborhood that, people getting shot or children getting kidnapped. Do you remember anything like that?
well, first of all, the difference now than then, it probably happened, but you didn't have the news that you have today. Now you got 24 hours a day news on different channels, and everybody wants to have the latest news. So you pick up everything, and you want to be there before the other guy gets it nowadays. So everything that happens, no matter how small, is broadcast. There, if you was a young kid, if you was anywhere up to, I suppose, let's say 14, you was outside playing, and the paper come, and that was up to your folks to read the paper. And you had the news come on at 10 o'clock at night. Well, by then the folks was in bed, so was you. So you really, like I said, it probably happened, and it more than likely happened. But you didn't hear about it. And besides, I think if it did happen, it would have been taken care of by the people involved. By that I mean, if something happened in the neighborhood, the neighbors were neighbors, and they would handle it themselves.
So it was more like a community.
Oh yeah, it was so much different. I mean, and I don't like talking about race, but the colored population of Waterloo was on the east side. There was no problems. You could go up there on a Saturday night and go in to the restaurants and stuff. I mean, they had awful good food up there, and you could go up any place up there. If you went in the colored part of town, they went out of their way, to be nice. Nothing like it is now, and there is actually businesses, taverns and stuff that was run by the whites. And my uncle owned a bar on East 4th Street, where the Illinois Central crosses East 4th, right in the middle of what used to be what they call Colored Town. He owned a bar there, and there was never any problems with race. It was just all of a sudden it became a big deal. But before then it wasn't. Nobody cared.
Seems like people respected each other more.
Well, I don't know. I think that it was like most people then was clannish, because when the immigrants come over here in the late 1900s or late 1800s, early 1900s, the Irish stayed with the Irish, the Germans stayed with. So he was more or less clannish, and the same with the blacks. They stuck by themselves. They come up to Waterloo because of the Illinois Central made their headquarters here, and there was a roundhouse and everything, and so they come up to work. They brought them up to work, and that's why we had such a large population. And they settled around where their work was. But like you take like the Sullivan brothers, they lived right in the middle of what is known as the Black Potter town. Sullivan brothers lived right in the middle of it, and they there was never a problem. It was so like I said, things was so much different then. It's just unbelievable. You didn't worry about the kids because a neighborhood was a neighborhood. In a neighborhood, if you did something wrong, you could expect your mother to hear about it, or your dad to hear about it. because they'd call them up and say, this happened.